finally in the world of memories. Which, contrary to what dub watchers probably thought for way too long, is not actually what it is meant. Uh, this is not meant to be time travel. I mean, you knew we were eventually going to have to talk about the world of memories thing and whether it was time travel or whether it wasn't time travel. Here's the funny thing, and I thought we were going to have to wait to have this discussion, admittedly, until a bit later. Like I was going to have to mention it. I was going to have to mention it because of the dub, but no, the sub actually makes it crystal clear. Crystal clear. Here, no, this is the world of the memory. This is a world. This is a world created by Atem's memories, not actual time travel. Which is why you've got that that black portal with the pyramid sticking out of it. That's why that's a thing, right? It makes sense that Atem wouldn't actually notice that yet because he hasn't looked up in the sky yet. Whether or not because Bakura is aware of it, that means he can see it. I don't know. But regardless, yeah, that's where we're at this point as I turn my monitor off to avoid the distraction. So, we'll be talking about that. I'll talk about that a bit later when Shoddy explains it. I'll explain it in a bit with Shoddy. I will go ahead and say that the World of Memories explanation is actually what gave the point to the sub. For a good chunk of the episode, I actually was leaning towards neither, and then the sub actually, actually went ahead and got the point, which I actually appreciate it doing, for the record. Excuse me. God damn it. Apparently, I'm not allowed to just to immediately record after having a bite to eat. Jesus. Anyways, um, so yeah. Although I suppose we should cover the first part of the episode before we get to that. So the gang arrive in Egypt, and they actually reunite with the Ishtars. Taya goes off to purchase a cartouche. We'll talk about that a bit later. We'll talk about that in a bit. He reunites with them. I do like this change, though, from the manga, because for those not in the know, in the manga, the Tablet of Memories never moves from the Domino Museum. In fact, a character that will show up later actually shows up earlier in the manga. And he actually kind of guides them and explains the World of Memories thing and yada yada yada. I kind of like the idea of Shoddy of Atem kind of mentally figuring that out based upon how Bakura is taunting him in the previous episode, as opposed to just having a random character that we've never seen before show up and explain it to him. Excuse me. Almost feel like I should leave this for tomorrow, but But anyways, yeah, I do like that they have to go to ancient Egypt to utilize it, right? You know, granted, I think that's literally just they didn't want to have the only reason the gang go to Egypt is for the ceremonial duel. So that's why it's here. So I mean, you could come up with any number of explanations you want And it really does not matter at the end of the day. It's just kind of a fun little food for thought. So they get to the tablet. They get to the tablet, and Taya hands over the cartouche. Which is the necklace thing that she hands in, saying, engrave your name when you find it. When you find it out, engrave it on the name. The tablet of memories had your name wrote it off or etched off, so it's like, hey, here, etch it into this when you find out. It's a nice gesture and one that I actually kind of like. So then Yamabakura's gambit gets put into effect. As the portion of his spirit that he planted in the Millennium Puzzle allows him to accompany him into the ancient past. So that way he doesn't have to ghost the gang for for however long until they get to the world of the memories. Which is funny because that actually kind of is the whole reason why they end up trying to travel to the world of memories anyway. Because Shadi informs them that Yamabakura followed him back there, and Tim kind of knew that in the sub and didn't tell the gang, which I have to agree with Anzu. Atem didn't want to worry them because it's like, oh, he's challenging me to a shadow game. I've fought plenty of those in the past. We're good. Granted, hinted, that's a bit of Atem's arrogance on display. Yeah, that's Atem's problem. It's not that he's prideful, it's that he's fucking arrogant. That's his problem. Pride is Kaiba's problem because he can't admit that he's freaking wrong half the time. Atem's problem is that he's arrogant. He's extremely arrogant. I've never really denied that. But yeah. Although I have mentioned that he is indeed right in a couple of things. Cough, cough of Kaiba's hatred. Cough, cough. I stand behind that part. That wasn't me trying to shoo you away, cat. As soon as I did the cough, cough, as this cat ran past me, I was like, that wasn't me shooing you away. What the hell? Anyways, so Shadi explains to them that he mentions that it's the world of memories in both versions, but he properly explains that, no, it is indeed a world created by his memories, by his past experiences. He will relive his destiny by existing in this world of memories. That is that is the whole point of this. He relives his memories to regain them effectively, which is unreliable considering that Yamabakura is fucking with them, but you get the point. What? Who? So Shadi also then starts effectively explains that you can get to the world of memories if if we go into the Millennium Puzzle's big labyrinthine corridors and find the true door. If we find the true door, we can unlock it because you're his vessel. And so you can open the true door, and we can go. You can go and help him with Yamabakura if you so wish. Because the gang basically are looking at this like in the sub, Yugi literally says, begs Shadi like, I want to go help the other me. Please let me go help the other me. Give me the means to help the other me. And Shadi is like, there is one way, and yeah, sure, I'll tell you. A nice gesture on Shadi's part. again, I do think that this still would have happened eventually, even without Shoddy's interference, right? Him being the true villain of the entire franchise does not make any sense to me. Because I feel like eventually, Zork would have woken up. After all, Night Shroud's a thing. And you're not going to tell me that if Dawn 1000 exists in this, in this timeline, that he's just going to sit on his ass too, you know? Although you could argue that the thing keeping both of those entities in check would be the Crimson Dragon, again, but that could also just be me. That could also just be me projecting because I like 5Ds. See, that's always the issue with constantly throwing world-ending threats at the characters in a franchise. Guys, where was darkness when Zork was around? Well, gathering his power still. Where the hell was the Crimson Dragon during all the GX stuff? Actually, wait, was the Crimson Dragon created by Zero Reverse? Actually, that would be an explanation for why the Crimson Dragon wouldn't be involved in this shit. Because the Crimson Dragon being born of the Zero Reverse phenomenon would actually make a large degree of sense. I don't remember the Crimson Dragon's origins. I'm spitballing, okay? Hey, hey, and please don't bother spoiling it. We'll find that all out when we actually watch the sub of 5Ds, or maybe we won't. Maybe it's unexplained. I don't know. So, anyways, Atem heads into the world of his memories. He is not used to being a pharaoh. I actually kind of like how awkward he is. I prefer the idea that he doesn't say anything when he raises his hand to the crowd out, and they all just immediately kneel. Because in the dub, it's really goddamn silly. Because he's just like hi, and everybody just kneels as if they were unworthy of being so casually addressed by their king. Which, considering that this is ancient Egypt, I could actually see that being a thing. It's actually kind of funny, right? Because as Tomb of the Nameless Pharaoh, the subversion of Tomb is the ultimate game, as the sub called it, put. Yeah, the pharaohs and the gods were kind of a similar rank in terms of like the overall hierarchy, which would explain why Atem can call forth Earth the Egyptian god monsters and tell them to punch Bakura in the face. Why Atem can call Obelisk and demand that he punch him in the face. You know. But anywho, so then we're introduced to the court of the Pharaoh. Well, he's mulling things over because he's debating whether or not his experiences in the 21st century, had any impact on what he's seeing, right? Because Shimon looks like Grandpa. Isis looks exactly like Ishizu. Like you might as well. You could argue they're separated at birth sisters. Ditto with Priest Edo and Seto Kaiba. We'll talk about him in a minute. Right? Right. Granted, what's funny is that in some ways, I'm not sure if the resemblance between Mahad and the Dark Magician was evident here, but that will become crystal freaking clear where that's going in the next episode. Just saying. Right. But we're quickly introduced to each of the chosen millennium priests. So we have Priest Seto of the with the rod, who is ruthless as fuck, especially in the sub. Again, we'll talk about him later. Akhenaten, who wields the power of the Millennium Eye. That's the old dude in the hood. The aforementioned Isis, complete with the Millennium Necklace. I mean, that's almost too on the nose, if you ask me. Hey, yeah, I know that name YouTube is nasty about that name. So if this video gets buried, I apologize. But it's gonna keep happening every time I mention her goddamn name. So I'm not. I'm just gonna keep. I'm just gonna refer. I'm just gonna play it straight and say fuck it. But anyways, and if these videos get buried, these videos get buried. Shrug. You know. Although I would argue that terrorist group is much less in the foreground nowadays. Anyways, the one that's a dead ringer for Shoddy is known as Shada, complete with the Millennium Key. And then there's Karim, him with the scales. Which is funny because we actually don't even see any kind of the power of the scales really. Fun fact: in outside of its capacity in the next episode, we don't actually see the scales power at all outside of season 0, which I kind of feel is a shame because in the modern time, Shoddy is just holding the key in the scales. We never have anybody wield the power of the Millennium Scale. Which is kind of weird in its own right. So then they conduct the Millennium Trial when Atem gets attacked. Isis literally, alerting Mahad to it. Almost as if she's like, she almost seems upset with Mahad that this is happening in the Japanese version in the sub, because in the dub it's more of like Mahad, an intruder, right? Like panic. In the sub it sounds more like Mahad, there's a fucking intruder, what the fuck? Her tone kind of gets across more of a what the fuck kind of a thing, instead of an oh no kind of a thing. So there's that. So then he undergoes the Millennium Trial, as the dub calls it. They call it a public trial right in the thing, but I like the Millennium Trial thing because initially they were just going to cart him away. But then Seto gets priest Seto. I'm going to have to try and come up with I'm going to have to try and figure out a way to kind of figure this out. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call him Priest Seto. I'm going to try to refer to him constantly as Priest Seto from here on out. Out, right? Although I guess I could refer to each one as Priest Seto and our Seto, right? When I'm talking about Seto Kaiba in the sub. Because there is going to be an episode in which there is going to be a scene where I will have to talk about the difference between Seto and Kaiba again in this arc. In fact, you probably know the scene that I'm referring to if you've seen the dub before. And in case you're wondering, wait, which scene was that? It's when Kaiba asks Atem, "Are you saying we're cousins?" We're going to have to discuss it there because obviously the dialogue's going to be different. Assuming Crunchyroll doesn't fail, of course. Like I said, I've seen snippets of the Japanese version before. Also, fun fact, the sub actually gets the powers It gets the powers of the Millennium items, right? Because in the dub, they actually make a large screw up. Because the key is supposed to let you see into the heart. The eye is supposed to let you read the mind. Yeah, the key is said to read the mind in the dub. Oops! Bit of a design flaw there, especially considering you got it right in season 1. But I suppose that was 4 seasons ago, so whatever. This is where they talk about the Ka, which is effectively which is kind of effectively uh, the spiritual form that the monsters that get extracted from people's souls uh, end up happening. Because, again, dual monsters have always existed. They have existed for, at bare minimum, 10,000 years. We know that from Doma. I don't remember exactly how long ago the Numeron Dragon was supposed to have crashed onto Earth. Please forgive me on that, or not knowing that off the top of my head. But again, you know, they even kind of hinted that in this very episode, right? Nobody knows where cause have come from. We just know what it is, kind of thing, you know. So then Presetto, so dub Presetto in the dub is like, I almost want to call him Priest Kaiba. I almost want to call him Priest Kaiba, but no. What's funny is that it's actually reverse. I almost want to call Priest Seto Priest Kaiba because in the sub because of how ruthless he is, but because in the dub he's like, all right. So now that we've dealt with that, lock him in the dungeon. And Aknon is like, no, the evil has been expelled, so we can just let him go free. I do like the explanation that he is just placed in under arrest and thrown into the dungeon anyway. Because an evil spirit making you do it, well, those spirits feed on the darkness, which is hilarious because this is exactly what they were going for with the with the Orichalcos, and it was done better here. Go figure. Figure. So he's carted away to the dungeon because he did still attack, and he was still ambitious enough that yeah he would do it, right? Because I have to imagine it's only the darkness that's already there is amplified, as opposed to evil acts are just are just not something that people do inherently, right? I don't want to get into that. Obviously, I just realized the rabbit hole I could have went down if I went any further. And then Shimon is even more of a colossal dick in the Japanese version. He's literally like, "Oh, don't worry, I've laced your tomb full of aggravating traps. Perhaps you will sleep peacefully when you die." God, I prefer the dub Shimon's whole thing of gotta put on a brave face. You gotta smile for the troops, kind of thing. And even at the worst of times, because that's more accurate. That's more appropriate, in my opinion. Granted, it's probably not as accurate, but you get my point. I suppose I never really got back to the time travel aspect, did I? So this is not time travel. I've already stated that. This is, for all intents and purposes, effectively another dimension, right? It is effectively a pocket dimension crafted by the Pharaoh's memories. In many ways, Izumi Bakura calls it a game board. It effectively refers to it as if it were a game board. Huh. Not the last time that comparison will be made, by the way. But yeah, that is it for this episode. I should also talk about one other thing, and it involves the dub. not only did the sub get the point this week, but the dub is kind of fucked in the head when it comes to this shit. I hate to say that so casually, but it's true. Because what's funny is that after next week, when we talk about the two-parter, The Intruder, we're going to have 5 standalone episodes. And I would argue at least one of those could have been combined with another to form a two-parter. So, for example, the two-part, the one when Slifer gets injured. Did I really just fucking say it? When Osiris gets injured. Oh my god, I cannot believe I just fucking said that. Oh. Oh. I was doing so good. When Osiris gets injured, that the episode after that one could have been shifted into a two-parter, but I digress. And honestly, I think name of the game probably could have either been attached to Village of Vengeance or Dark One Cometh, but that's beside the point. But yeah, we definitely have multi-parters coming. Because, like I said, we've got Village of Vengeance, which is a 5-parter. We've got the Dark One Cometh, which is a 4-parter, and then we've got the Final Duel, which is a 4-parter. But regardless, yeah, that's it. This is definitely a good start to the actual meat of the arc. I would argue because again, I've been talking for just under a half an hour, and yeah, absolutely. This is absolutely the uh, this is everything. This is everything I remember this arc to be. It's intriguing. There's multiple aspects to this thing that make me just go, yes, I want to know more about this. Right? Right. I really do like this arc. I really do. And I have to admit, it's off to a great start. I know that some people are probably kind of looking at me weird when as I keep getting weirded out by the sub constantly getting the point, because again, for the past 3 weeks now, the sub has gotten the point every single week, right? With Tomb of the Nameless Pharaoh, it was the censorship, and I feel like the dramatic tension of the episode is much better in the sub as a result of that, of the uncensored version. When it came to Spiritual Awakening last week, it was because of the atmosphere and the use of the music and the use of the dialogue. The dialogue flowed better in the sub in the last episode. And this time, it's because we actually really do not play around with the idea of whether or not this is time travel. We make it crystal fucking clear that this is not time travel in the Japanese version. This is an alternate dimension. Okay? This is effectively a little memory bubble, effectively. For those familiar with the Rosario Vampire manga, this is exactly of what happens when the Rosario yanks Tsukune. Tsukune. I want to say his name's Toho Fuhei. Oh, I am terrible. I'm terrible. I'm a fake Rosario Vampire fan. No, it's just been forever since I've read season 2. There you are. There we go. I was right. It's Toho Fuhei. Yeah, so Tofu, Skune, and then like 3 other people. Or two, no, Mizure, that was the other one. So it's like 3 people total. Tofu, Skune, and Mizure were all yanked into the memories. Right? Anyways, but enough about that. Yeah, I I'm still intrigued by this arc. This was a B rank episode. I should go ahead and clarify. So this time, so yeah, for the first time we haven't had an A rank, and the only reason this one's kind of a B rank is mostly because I almost feel like this is a bit too much of a setup, and I kind of almost feel like you can kind of the pacing kind of slipped a little bit. I don't actually mind this episode, like I said. This is still really good. I just kind of feel like there wasn't as much intrigue here because now we're actually getting, starting things off. And you wouldn't want the first turn of a game to be, to immediately jump us into the insane epicness, right? Not unless you want to go and do a stupid time loop theory crap. Have like a certain video game franchise I could name, but let's not get into that. I've bitched enough about that as it is. Anyways, I'm going to chop this off. Next time, the Ultimate Shadow game properly kicks off its first round. Until next time, Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one. Stay tuned.